Hello and welcome to the Parents Roundtable. Experts and everyday parents discuss common parenting issues. A telesummit produced by Joyful Parenting Coaching in support of United We Parent. United We Parent was co-founded by Hogan Hilling, author of the Dadly book series, and Elise Cohen-Ho, family and relationship coach at Ask Dr. Ho. The mission of United We Parents, a safe, trustworthy, and non-judgmental organization that embraces parents of every family dynamic, is to unify, strengthen, and inform the parenting community. Co-founders Hilling and Ho are coming out with 2 books this summer that really capture the mission of the organization. The first, by Hogan Hilling and Austin Dowd, is Dadly Dads, Fathers of the 21st Century. And the second, also by Hilling and Elise Ho, is Amazing Moms of the 21st Century. Both of these books really capture the mission that there are many, many different ways to be an effective parent. United We Parent is also proud to announce the first ever United We Parent Conference, a day-long in-person event designed to provide resources for parents regardless of gender, sexuality, marital status, how or when you became a parent, ethnicity, age, income, or anything else. We're focused on creating an interactive environment and to collaborate in harmony with other parents to create a happier and healthier parenting community. I'm Elizabeth Stitt of Joyful Parenting Coaching, host of your summit. And today I am very, very proud to introduce Mercedes Samudio, an expert in helping parents to shame-proof their parenting. So hold on, and she'll be in the room in a minute, and I am going to tell you all about her. You are going to love her. So here she is, Mercedes Samudio, an LCSW. She's a parent coach, speaker, and best-selling author of Shame-Proof Parenting, who helps parents and children communicate with each other, manage emotional trauma, navigate social media and technology together, and develop healthy parent-child relationships. As a licensed clinical social worker with a private coaching practice, Mercedes has worked with adoptive families, foster families, teen parents, parents navigating the Child Protective Services system, and children living with mental illness. Mercedes seeks to empower parents to believe that they are already great guides for raising healthy and happy children. And that's the official introduction, but I just have to tell you all that I have read Mercedes' book, and I love her book. And I'm so excited, Mercedes, that you're going to get this opportunity to talk more about it. I know you've been doing it in lots of good places, but I'm super, super glad you're here with us to talk about it. Yeah. Because you guys, I just have to tell you that Mercedes writes about her own experience in such a beautiful way that it's to have shared that with us is an enormous gift to the world. Thanks. So if you do nothing else but to read the first part of the book, no, I can't say that because the second part of the book is totally awesome too. But why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your journey and then what it means to be a shame-proof parent?
Yeah. Thank you so much. That was such a nice introduction. I feel the same about you. You are amazing and have such a great light in the world as well. So thank you. My journey, So I guess one of the things that I have really figured out as a parent coach who doesn't have children is that I am the kid of the parents that I want to support and help. So I don't come to my parent coaching as like a parent who has had years of experience raising kids. I come from it from a different perspective of being the grown-up child and really wanting to honor what it means to be a part of a family system and to really honor the whole human process that a parent goes through. It's not, you don't just start being a human when you decide to raise children. You've been a human for however many years, you've been alive. And what I really believe in being a shame-proof parent is how to take all of that information, all of those experiences, and bring them to your parenting identity. So that way you kind of have a shield, if you will, when people do try to judge your parenting decisions, when people do try to, tell you how you should parent or where you should be at this point in your parenting, you get to take all those experiences that you've had from, starting a career, getting through college, getting through school, whatever you've done. Those were all life lessons that you can now integrate into your parenting identity to raise healthy, happy children.
I love that. I love that. That's really that idea that it is the sum of our experiences that make us the right parent for our kids. And that all of those uncomfortable moments and scrapes and bumps and deep wounds even are things that we bring to our parenting that actually enrich us.
I agree.
And can make us an even better parent.
I completely agree with that. I think, sometimes we tend to ignore those parts of ourselves because we don't want our kids to see them. But in essence, when our kids see those imperfect pieces mixed in with the growth and the reflection that we've had from those imperfect pieces, it allows them kind of this model of, oh, when I mess up, it doesn't define me. It just gives me another layer that I get to be, kind of show up in the world as.
Yeah.
Right?
To really model being in process.
Right.
So cool. Okay, so you come to parenting not as a parent. I love that idea of being the grown-up child, because of course that's how we are going to measure our success. We who do have our kids are going to look at our grown-up children and say, I did okay, didn't I? So what drew you to this, I know your hashtag of end parent shaming. What drew you to that?
After all of the years, so in my bio, as you read, I've worked with so many different families, and I've known pretty much from very early on in my life that I wanted to work with families. And so all of the work that I've done from undergrad, from internships, from grad school, I've come in contact with so many families, and all the parents of those families, no matter where they were, caregivers, grandparents, biological parents, adoptive parents, foster parents, there was this common theme of, I feel so ashamed of this identity that I've had to have on. And it comes from just so many areas. I mean, being a biological parent, you would assume, well, you brought this child to the world, it's yours, but it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. And everyone expects me to know what I'm supposed to do with this person. And I don't know what I'm doing with myself half the time. And I'm also now tasked with trying to manage who I am and my journey and my imperfections, while I'm also trying to manage someone else who's growing and changing every day, every second. And how am I supposed to do that when everyone's like, oh, what, can you try this? And, it's so difficult to navigate all of that.
Can you think of a few concrete examples of hearing somebody's story and really, I just realized that, like, oh, wow, that shame is a heavy burden.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'll talk about my story because I think that one resonates with me a lot. And one of the things that's really interesting is that I was raised by my step grandmother. And so there's so much shame in our culture in general when a biological parent can't raise their child. And so when the grandparent or another family member has to step in, there's so much shame just on that alone. And then, in the African-American community, there's a lot of shame around, substance abuse, which my biological parents struggled with, and why I wasn't able to stay with them. And so all of this was kind of placed on my step grandmother. And she also had her own life and her own years of shame that she had carried from her childhood and her young adult life, and now being tasked to take care of her grandchild when she thought she was done. It's like, what do I do with this? Yeah. And so it kind of manifested itself in a really unhealthy way in our relationship. And I think that that's what ends up happening a lot of the time when we shame parents. We think, I'm telling Elizabeth something that's going to make her a better parent, but we don't know what happens when she goes home and has to deal with the shame of being told yet again that she didn't do it right, yet again that her parenting decision isn't right, yet again that her children are still not as good as she thought they were. What happens at home? And we have to really think about that. What happens?
Deciding to parent you, I'm sure she was hearing from half the people of, she's not your biological child. Why are you doing that?
Yep.
Yep. From the other half the people, comment on who your parents had been.
Yep. And I think, and it's hard. It's twofold. It's not just that she was raising me as her child, but then also the fact that she's also being, shamed for, why did she take on someone else's burden?
Yeah.
And what that looks like, and why did she allow that to happen? Which again, that you have to struggle with. How can you imagine what it feels like to say, okay, I took this child on because I wanted to raise them, and then, excuse me, then everyone is questioning that decision.
Yes, and even if adults think they're being careful about talking about things around it, I can imagine you like standing outside
Oh
a church
God, yeah.
5 feet away, is seemingly playing, with something of the flower or something, and these adults are,
Oh
ragging
yeah.
grandma, and you're overhearing that
Oh
and
yeah.
taking that as one more layer.
Oh yeah. I remember one story in particular. We were a lot of my family lives out of state, and so we're out of state visiting family. And one of my mom's older friends that she hadn't seen since maybe she was a young girl came by the family home, and of course she didn't know that now she had another daughter to take care of. So she introduced me, this is my daughter, and she goes, "From who?" And she says, I could just see the shame of my mom not knowing who to tell it was from who. And she was an older woman, so people are trying to figure out, how do you have this child who's under like 20 years old? Like, how did that happen? And I could just see it in her face. And I just kind of casually walked away because I had been introduced and it was okay for me to walk away. But it's in those moments where, like you said, we're trying to be careful. We want to know more information, but there's just so much that we don't know how to handle. We don't know how to sit in that, oh, I don't have to have all the information to just say, oh, okay, nice to meet you, Mercedes, and move on with that conversation. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, it's a very, I think shame to me is such an insidious thing, especially when it comes to the parenting identity, because it weaves itself under things like welfare of the child, welfare of the parent, wanting to make sure that you're okay. It kind of attaches itself to those things. And it's hard for parents to, number one, stand their ground. Right. I've had parents say, well, I can't say anything to my mom because she takes care of the kids sometimes. I can't say anything, to my sister because, sometimes she'll go to the grocery store for me. And so you end up kind of being bombarded with all of this stuff and not knowing how to take care of yourself and your children because you don't want to alienate your support system.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And of course, I mean, you and I can stand from the outside of it and realize that mom and that sister who's part of your support system, who's shaming you, are carrying their own stuff and are,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, this is so true.
Yeah.
So let's get to the fun stuff because
yeah.
I love your plan. I just love your plan for helping parents to shed that. Mm-hmm. And as you say, build this barrier for themselves so that they can like move forward without being buffeted all the time.
Right. I think for me, it starts with this idea of knowing what you really want and trusting your own gut. I think a lot of times, parents, especially newer parents or younger parents, feel like I have to listen to everyone else. I have to do what everyone else is saying. I have to follow the latest research. I have to make sure that I'm doing it all right. And they sometimes ignore those little intuitive nudges that say, go here or go there. And so I teach my parents first to kind of start to trust that gut instinct that says, this is what my child needs right now. Other people say, oh, don't hold that baby too much. But if your gut's saying, oh, she really needs to be held right now, go for it. Oh, I wouldn't spoil him. If you need to come down on his level in that moment while he's having that tantrum and your gut's like, oh, he needs you, go to him, go to your child. And I think one of the ways to help people understand that is for you to get comfortable with those decisions first, to say, I really do want to go to my kid. I really do want to help my child. Yeah. I really do, see their tears and see their frustration. I really want to be on their level. Because then when the adult says, oh, you're spoiling him, oh, you're making him so entitled, you can say, well, my kid is this. They need this. I chose this. Can you please respect that? And to follow that. And if they say, well, I don't agree, say, no worries. Thank you so much for, sharing how you feel. You don't have to agree, but this is something that me and my family are trying right now.
Yes.
And it's that level of confidence of, you don't have to say, well, this is my family, tell what to do. You don't have to go there unless you want to. If that's your personality, no judgment, go for it. But I think there's this idea of, can you please respect that? This is what we're trying right now.
Right.
I'm taking this route right now because it makes sense for us.
Yes.
And I think it also talks about that process of when your kids are in a certain age bracket, there are certain strategies that just work. And then they'll have a growth spurt and they'll have their own development. And then you'll shift it and do something different, so.
For one, it's completely different than the approach that you need for the other.
Yeah. And I even feel like with one kid, what worked when they were 5 is going to change so drastically when they're 10, and then they're going to be 11, and they're going to be 15. And like, you're going to be constantly trying new ways to connect with them and keep them, feeling healthy and feeling heard and keeping yourself kind of, replenished. So I think it's really important that when parents begin to defend themselves or begin to speak up for themselves, it's not about, this is what we want to do. It's more about, this is what we're trying. This is where we are. I also tell my parents to tell people what they really need. So when someone's telling you their opinion, say, what I really would love to hear right now is X or Y.
Right.
That what you're saying right now is not helping right now.
Yes.
I'm very stressed out. So can you please either say this, or can you just kind of let it go for a minute until I can hear it from you? And again, I'm using my language. That's very therapeutic language, but the concept is that you're telling the person what you need. Because when you have people in your support system who don't know how to talk to you or don't always know what to say to you, you have to give them sometimes that language. The same thing we do for our kids, right? We give our kids that language. We teach them how to ask for a sippy cup and ask for more crackers and ask to go to the bathroom. We teach them.
Yes.
So we can do that for our family members and our support system too. We can say, hey, if you see me struggling, I would really appreciate it if you did this. Or if you haven't heard from me in a couple of weeks, can you please just send me a text that says this? I really appreciate that. Or if you know that we've been having a hard time with their behavior and we've been going back and forth to the school, I would just appreciate it if you didn't say X, for a while. You're letting people know what you need, and that helps you to shame-proof your family too, because it gives you the respite you need to work through that issue, and then you and your family can emerge when you're done with whatever tools and whatever resolution you guys have.
Yes.
I
don't know if I've had some parents with this experience, but this was my experience, was that I could have a voice in defense of my child in a way that it was sometimes hard for me to have a voice in defense of myself.
Yeah.
And that actually became there's this whole conversation about children healing our wounds, or active parenting being a place where we can heal our wounds.
I agree.
And that I would say would be one for me, that I could be that fierce mother bear.
Yes.
For my child, and all of a sudden, boy, I could do boundaries. I could be super clear.
I agree.
Boundaries with people that I had never been able to do that with.
Yeah. And I feel like as sometimes hard as it is to hear this, I think we each get the child that we deserve, and our kid gets the parent that they need, so I've seen these combinations quite a bit in my work, where a parent who is really quiet and usually doesn't speak up that much will have a kid that kind of forces them to have to go to the school and talk up, and have to go to the playground and talk up, and have to go here and talk up, because that kid has such a vibrancy about them that they've got to kind of be active in their child's life to make sure other people don't hurt them. You know what I mean? So it's like, you get, I think the child that, like you said, will just help you to develop and help you. I think sometimes even in your parenting identity, it will help really kind of heal some of the other parts of your identity that maybe you ignored or you didn't really take care of before you had a child.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I remember one of the things in the book that you talked about was that we get hung up on our defense mechanisms.
Mm-hmm.
Can you define that a little bit and give some examples of where we might be tripping ourselves?
Yeah. I think defense mechanisms are something that in psychology, they are ways that we have, our brain and our psyche has kind of created to protect us from issues and instances where we've been hurt. And I feel the same happens for our parents, that when a parent gets judged and shamed enough, they begin to develop these protective barriers around their parenting identity. One that I think happens a lot is it's called martyrdom, right? You do so much for your kid. You do everything for them. You give them everything they need. And then your kid, for whatever reason, isn't as appreciative as you think they should be, or as grateful as you think they should be for those things.
What happens?
And it's this level of martyrdom that I think actually our society has created, because when you as a parent, especially I think women have this more than men sometimes, once you have a kid, that's all you're supposed to do. If you go to work, oh my God, why are you at work? If you stay home too much, well, you need to show your kid that you're doing both, and so I feel like mothers are always kind of caught in between a rock and a hard place to show up as the perfect, as the right, as the best. And so that martyrdom comes from wanting to show up that way. I've done everything. I've made everything clear for you. Everything is perfect for you. You have everything.
Yes.
Go forth and enjoy it.
Yeah.
And we fail in those moments, we fail to realize that our children are different humans. So everything that we think they need to succeed might not always fit with who they are and their identity.
Right.
And in those moments, I think it's really important that, again, we really address the shame in our society, because when we put those pressures on parents, they begin to feel like they have to martyr themselves. They have to kill pieces of their identity. They have to only focus on their child in order to get the approval of a society that changes with every era or with every year or every week.
Yeah.
You know, and it's kind of this vicious cycle. So society says parents should be here. Parents try to be there by being martyrs. They end up disconnecting with their kid. Their kid ends up doing something really, not great. So then society sets a new, kind of expectation to manage that society of children who aren't great. I think about now, we talk about entitlement in millennials. Well, that comes from a society of people who, I think the children now who are millennials, or the children who are going into that millennial age group, came from a society where all this research came out about brain development and child development. So every parent was trying to keep up with it.
Yes.
And in a sense, we have so many kids now who, they're really well-rounded emotionally, but sometimes they're not always able to manage things. They're not always able to do what we were able to do back in the day before anyone cared about our emotions, and our feelings, right? And so I think
so that brings me to a good point, which had popped into my mind.
Yeah.
I think you talk about this book in the too, is like first knowing yourself and your strengths,
mm-hmm.
and owning your strengths, and at the same time recognizing that any strength has an underbelly.
Mm-hmm.
And so yes, naturally your child is going to get less of this
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
than that.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, for me and my child at the latter end of my hands-on parenting, I was awesome on independence.
Yeah.
Totally awesome on independence. And now I think, oh, did I not just love her and hug her and sweep her up and spoil her and bring her things enough?
Yeah.
And that is a cost of raising a child to be really independent, is that they get less of that sort of hearth mother nurturing.
Right.
And so it's like, okay. So
right.
I'm going to get that from someone else.
Right. And I think, it's interesting, because I don't feel like those things have to be mutually exclusive. What I teach my parents is this: when you think about the skill set you want your child to have, first step back and say, how did I learn it? I can say, because for me, I'm in my 30s, I know that a lot of my skill set came from a lot of hard knocks. That's why I'm so strong and resilient. I had, a lot of things were a lot of tough love, a lot of you'll figure it out, just go, and so then I think, well, do I want my child to learn it that way? How do I want my kids to learn how to wash their clothes? Do I want them to have a whole wash that comes out pink and then they'll realize how that looks? Or do I want to teach them how to do it? It doesn't mean that I'll do it for them, but it's like, how do I want to teach them? I knew how to ride the bus by the time I was in high school, because I had to get myself to and from school. And even though I may take my kid to school, I can still say, well, how do we get there as we're driving? What street should I turn on?
Yes.
Where should I go? Oh, there's traffic. What other route can I take? Like, you can still talk to your kid and teach them things without saying, well, you better learn how to walk to school. No, I don't want my kid to have to walk or take the bus. Fine, I'll take them. But you can still talk them through the route. If you get lost, what happens? If someone comes, picks you up, how do you get back home? Right? You can still talk to your kids and teach them the exact same skills of independence without it being about tough love, without it being about, oh, you'll figure it out once you bump your head and, bust your head open, you'll figure it out. You don't have to do it that way if you don't want,
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
So tell me about creating your own parenting manual.
That's the fun one, I think, because I think we're still looking for that in our society. We're still looking for that elusive manual that says from birth to 18, how do I not mess this up? And what I teach in the book, and what I teach my clients, is it's really about understanding your family. Right? That's where kind of that manual will come from, because we said it earlier, and I'll say it again, every stage of your child's development is going to be different. Even if all you have is one kid, the first couple of years of their life, they're going to need a lot more than they're going to need the next couple of years, and then the next and the next. And so what skills, what strategies are you teaching them to navigate their social emotional kind of development, their academic development? It's one of the things that I tell my parents about. If you can do this part of it, enlist the help from somebody else. I know parents who are like, I'm not good with emotions. I'm like, that's what people like myself are for, and therapists and counselors. If you don't want to be the one to do the emotional piece because you have your own history and you have your own, kind of journey that you're on, get help. if you're a parent who's like, you know what, I can talk to my kid all day, we'll have a great time together, but I can't count or read, save my life.
Yeah.
Well, that's what tutors are for. That's what teachers are for. You know what I mean? So it's like, we have to kind of get away from this idea that you're the parent and you're the sole responsibility for making sure your kid is perfect.
Yes.
Let's get away from that. Know your strengths. Know
Yeah.
what you do well. And the parts of you that are like, oh, I've never really done good at this, or I'm still on my own journey with this. Get out into the world and say, who else can help me? Who in my community can help me? Who in my support system can give my kid can bolster my kid with some of these skills that I don't have yet, or that I'm still working on myself, right? But that takes you knowing you first and knowing what you can do, and then allowing someone else to step in and say, well, I can help you with this piece of it, or I'll take that piece of it.
Ask too.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
In Dr. Laura Markham's interview, she shared that in, when we anthropologically, when we look at that village, there were 9 adults for every child. It's like,
right?
What I couldn't do with 9 adults.
Right. And what's funny? Here's the deal. We do have adults around our children all the time. They're all around, teachers and community members and neighbors and friends and family members. It's just really, again, going back to, what do I do well? I see so many of my parents say, oh, I suck at this. I'm like, well, what do you do good? And it's always like this moment of, oh, I don't know. Like it takes them a moment. They can tell me, they can rattle off all the things they've messed up without even blinking. And then I say, hey, what do you do good? What's a great thing that you do with your kids? And they're like, oh, I think I make sandwiches pretty good. And I'm like, all right, good. Let's start there. What else do you do well?
Yeah, exactly.
What else do you do well? Well, I'm really good at homework time. Awesome. Well, I'm really good at great. And so in those moments, in those pockets where you're like, oh, but they really need to know how to do math. Okay, so who can help with that? You've got the reading part down, but who can help with the math? You've got the science part down, but who can help with the reading? It's really about saying, okay, I don't have to do it all on myself, right? Even though there are not delineated 9 adults that are designated for my family, I can go out and say, okay, I need someone for this. I need someone from here. We do that with every other part of our lives. We do it at work. Right? We do it when we have to go to get our car fixed. We say, oh, my car is, broken. Let me take it to the right person. Oh, I'm having a pain in my chest. Let me go to the doctor.
Right, exactly.
Like we do that all the time.
We would never dream of doing ourselves and not in the help of somebody who knew what a carburetor was.
Right? Like if you cut your finger, you don't go, oh, I can sew this up. You say, well, I need to go to the ER. Like there we go. Your car kind of starts to smoke. You say, well, I know who to take it into. Yeah. And when it comes to parenting, when you're bleeding as a parent or you're smoking as a parent, we say, oh, I got to sit here and figure it out. Why do you do that to yourself? You're not okay.
Such a great question. I love that.
Right?
Yeah, I really, really love that. It's so true.
Yeah. But again, if I can posit why we do it, I think our society has taught us that. Our society that we live in now has said, this is your kid, you brought into the world, you better figure it out. We've moved away from that village idea. We've moved away from having this idea where it's like, when you're struggling, get help, especially when it comes to parenting. Yeah. I think, and I also, if I can kind of push it a bit, being a therapist, I think we do it in the mental health world too. We still stigmatize people who need help emotionally and mentally. And I think being a parent is definitely an emotional and mental journey. So if we stigmatize people who have bipolar and who live with schizophrenia or who live with suicidal ideation, if we stigmatize that, we're definitely going to stigmatize that all-encompassing, mental and emotional journey that is parenting.
Yeah, right. And everybody is dealing with stuff, and everybody's on a spectrum. Mm-hmm. And the people who are dealing better are the ones who have had more help along the way.
I 100% agree with that. I stand here as someone who has had therapy, who has worked with coaches, who still, seeks support and guidance when I need it, and say that when you're doing well, when people look like they're doing well, it's probably because they have gone and got some help. It's probably because they've invested in that piece of it. And I think, barring all the things that may be going on in our world and in our nation, it's really important to find support. That support doesn't always have to be a $10,000 therapist or a $5,000 course. You can just say, you know what, I need help.
Yes.
I need help.
Well, I'm just going to put in a plug here for United We Parent as an organization.
Yeah.
Because I know that that's really the mission.
Yeah.
Really the idea is that if we bind together, if we come together as parents, each of us has wisdom. And if we can give it without the judgment piece, and if we can sit with each other without fearing the judgment and just take the insights that people have, we're a tremendous resource.
Yes. Yes. I completely agree with that. I feel that way so much so about just kind of reaching out and saying, I need help. I love what United We Parent does. I love what other organizations do. But I think for me, and the voice that I would like to add into the parenting world is that we've really got to look at how we shame parents. Because once we stop doing that, then parents will stop hiding. They will stop, sitting at home by themselves thinking they're alone. For fear that someone is going to shame them because they can't get their kid to sit down straight, because they can't get their kid to finish a whole school year without getting suspended. Like, let's stop shaming parents. Let's stop telling them how bad they're doing. Let's stop saying, oh my God, you're a horrible parent, or you don't prescribe to X parenting, so you're not doing it right, or you haven't read X research, so you don't understand. Let's just say, look,
Now,
here.
what popped in my mind was the fact that when we look from the outside, we don't know if what we're seeing is a victory, right? Maybe we saw a kid who was able to sit still for 5 minutes before he started tearing up the magazines in the waiting room.
Yep.
Wow, that's
Yep.
fantastic.
Yep.
But we're sitting there going, why is that parent letting that kid do that? That's terrible. You should allow him here. You should take him outside. When that mother might be crowing, or that dad, excuse me, might just be crowing about 5 whole minutes of him peacefully looking at that magazine before it turned into ripped pages. Yep.
And I would even go to the other extreme. I think sometimes when we see parents who are not taking care of their kid the way we think, we don't know how long that parent has just been like, I'm done. It's the end of the day. I'm done. I can't anymore. I can't yell anymore. I can't say sit. I can't say stop. So we're thinking, oh my God, they just let their kid run amok. But for that parent, they've been dealing with that for 8 hours today. They're just done. They're like, okay, if he wants to jump off something head first, fine. I'm done. I can't right now. Which is, again, why villages are so important. When you are done, someone will just come in and say, go ahead, take a nap. I got it. Let me, we'll watch them for a while. Go ahead and do that. So parents don't have to run themselves that ragged. So parents don't have to be 8 hours by themselves taking care of a child who may be having behavior issues for whatever reason. They've got somebody kind of the tag team in. All right, you got the next hour. All right, I'll get the next hour.
I like that tag. You're it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's so true. Mercedes, we're coming to the end of our time together. Is there any final message you want to share with us?
Yeah, one thing that I believe in shame-proof parenting is that it's not just about the parent or the family. I really do believe it's about our whole society really coming to the aid of families. And that is how we're going to kind of shift, I think, where we are in our society right now. And I'll leave it as euphemistic as I can at that. But that's really what I truly believe, and why I'm so adamant about ending parent shame and really helping families to become more shame-proof.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the work you do in the world and for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.